Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of It Came From Facebook. In today's episode, we're just looking at some strange and delusional sellers, not necessarily having a theme for today, no brands, no types of sellers, just some interesting ones that I thought that we'd have some fun with. Let's check out one of the very first listings, the most unique listing I have seen in a long time. This is a 2007 Kawasaki KLR going for $7,000 with 18,000 miles. Now you might say, yam, that is a whole heck of a lot of money for a 20-year-old KLR with 18,000 miles. But this is no ordinary KLR. Seller says no motorcycle license or special license needed in California. Sidecar rigs are considered a car, so we have a sidecar. 2007 KLR650 with a utilitarian built sidecar with heavy-duty construction. Velorex 562 sidecar body, the conversion done by myself in 2024. That's a little concerning. You never like to see the backyard mechanic sort of thing. I actually would have preferred to see an actual company make this thing, but I digress. Said windshield and sunroof are made with safety vehicle glass. Side panels are Lexan with aluminum framing, removable sunroof. It's got a fold-out bed conversion, which is bolted together with grade 8 bolts so it can be disassembled or customized easily. A leading link front fork with EMP shock. The doohickey has been done, which is a big thing on KLRs. I still don't quite know what the doohickey actually is. It's been explained to me before. If KLR owners want to sign in on the comments and let us know what the doohickey actually is. I just know it's something that if you don't get it fixed on the KLR, it nukes the bike, which is one of the strangest quirks about that machine. So this fella says that he needs a windscreen and that he bought a sailboat and he needs the cash. So let's take a look. First of all, I apologize for the photos. This seller screenshotted the photos on his phone and we have the black bars. And it's just kind of a pain to look at. But here we have a KLR, you can see here, with a leading link front fork, similar to what we saw on the Janus Halcyon 250 we had here in the shop, and the sidecar as well. Looks like little utility trailer wheels on the side of it, which you don't need super crazy wheels on a sidecar, but if you've ever driven or ridden a sidecar, you know that they are a bit tenuous on the handling side of things. You have extra mechanical grips just merely because you have more rubber on the ground, but they handle very awkwardly. Here we have, this is kind of like a full moto loadout camping situation. And I'm not really sure why someone would do this with a folding bed, a sidecar, all the luggage and everything else. I'm like, at this point, you're one wheel away from just why don't you just take a convertible and go hit the road? That's going to be a lot simpler. But some people do it for these little dudes right here. Look how cute this little dog is on the fold-out bed here on the KLR. And maybe that's why this guy did this. He's like, I want my dog to come with me on my motorcycle, and this is how I'm going to get it done. And you got to say, the dog looks like a very happy little camper in this sidecar. That's a pretty cool look right there. Out there in the middle of the desert, you, your sidecar, your dog, a man against the world with his best friend. Pretty sweet, I'm not gonna lie. It does bring a smile to my face and it warms my heart to see something like this. So I love people being inventive with their motorcycles and having fun. He's even got a little traffic cone on a little net and webbing on the back of this here. I think this KLR was probably used as an adventure build for a very long time. And then this person probably thought, hey, I want to bring my dog with me. And so they built a sidecar and got it done. This is kind of a hilarious listing, very fun, very unique, and the pricing reflects that. But unfortunately, as we often say, when you modify something to the point of not really being able to bring it back to stock easily, it stops really being worth anything. So this seller, unfortunately, I think, he's going to have to be stuck with this and going to have to find the money for his sailboat somewhere else. Moving on. Now, next up is a 2002 Kawasaki Ninja, $4,800 with 10,000 miles. Now, the first thing I want to point out is this Kawasaki Ninja from 2002 is very confused about its identity because this has the Movistar livery on it, and it literally says Yamalube down here. Now, this livery was actually from Valentino Rossi and the Yamaha crew. I think they ran the Movistar in the late 2000s, 2000 2008, 2009, or that might have been the Fiat like white livery. My MotoGP lore by the seat of the pants here is not up to snuff, but all I know is that this is not a Kawasaki livery, so already some red flags with this motorcycle. This guy says, selling my Kawasaki Ninja, 1300 cc's. Now it does say ZX12R right here, so is the motor built? Is the motor larger? We don't know. It says in excellent condition, bike runs perfectly and has been well maintained. Comes with a rebuilt title. Nope, see you later. Fully inspected and ready to ride, no mechanical issues, serious buyers only, no trades, sale only, DM me if interested. Now, this is a classic case where thou doth protest too much. He said it's in excellent condition, runs perfectly, and no mechanical issues. He said that 3 different times in a listing that is only 3 sentences, right? And so that leads you to believe that it's probably not all mechanically perfect if you're saying this that many times. And a 24-year-old Kawasaki Ninja ZX12 that with a rebuilt title, I'm almost guaranteeing you that it's not going to run correctly and it's going to have some issues. Let's take a closer look at this machine. So the swing arm is a different color. That's not a stock swing arm. They never sold them in a kind of orange color like that. I think that's an aftermarket swing arm. It color matches the wheels, which is kind of interesting. Half of the rear sets are that same like anodized cheapo Chinesium orange color. So is the triple tree up here. So clearly this bike was rebuilt to some capacity. You know, to what extent was it rebuilt and why, we don't know. But all I know is these are like 3 different shades of like bronze and orange on the side of this bike. And it just makes it look really, really cheap and non-OEM. 2002 ZX12 was a motorcycle that should not have carburetors as far as I know. This was past the generations that had the carbs. I think I see inside the plumbing here, you know, just normal EFI, the good stuff, you know, modern day control for fuel on this machine. And so you're not going to have issues with that. The cockpit is a bit of a weird melange of like grips and weird aftermarket stuff that doesn't really look that good. It kind of looks like a toy motorcycle and not in a good way. Front end components look reasonably in shape. We do see some fork oil right here though. That's a classic sign. If you see that the fork has been traveling all the way down to here and here, but it looks like really grimy and leaky, that means that you need new seals on the forks. Now it's not a huge job. You can take that to someone, get it done for like maybe $100, $200. It's really not a big deal, but it's just something to keep in mind that you're not going to have proper action on the fork if you're leaking oil, right? Like that's not going to work correctly. Cockpit's reasonably clean. This is just one of those like sort of confused motorcycles. Like I don't think the full story is present here. Like why does it have a rebuilt title? Why does it have so much mismatched color painted things? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And the price is not reflective of the value whatsoever. So this one, I would say pass on it. Rebuilt title, looks a bit junky. Definitely not the vibe. Moving on. All right, 2014 Kawasaki Ninja, $12,000 with 6,000 miles. We don't know anything about this bike. I believe this is a ZX14 based on the fairings and the overall vibe of the bike. All the seller has told us is PC5 arm and more, 12,000 ODO. So couldn't even write OBO, which is or best offer. Now let's take a look at this machine and we can clock a couple things, right? So PC5 arm, I'm assuming he means the swing arm here because this does look aftermarket. Looks like it's a little bit longer. We have drag pipes here, basically. These are just like straight out to just dump out over here. So this motorcycle was either used as a drag bike or some sort of roll racing bike. This was a photo, I'm not even kidding, provided by the seller. We just have somebody's shoes. The bike is off in the distance. We can't even see it correctly. Just really, really weird and crazy stuff. That looks right here either like a quick shifter or an air shifter system. Some of these old school drag bikes and roll race bikes, before they had quick shifters, used something called an air shift system. I've always seen old school fast guys talk about those. I think once quick shifters came around, people stopped using them as much, but air shift was a thing back in the day. We have this very low res version. I do like the guy with the leather pants, slightly overweight with the overalls on the scooter, looking pretty good over here, looking larger than life. Love that. Bike is on a chock just up here, really grainy. Can't really see what's going on with the machine, but it's kind of weird, right? The whole vibe of this bike is a bit weird. $12,000 makes absolutely no sense on this machine. because you have a molested ZX14 with a long swing arm and just like some go fast mods. Why would this thing cost $12,000? It also looks like it's at some sort of like meetup, or maybe this was like when the guy unloaded it or something. There's a couple other bikes over here. There's just random guy walking around with the blue shoes. I don't know what circumstances these photos were taken, but it looks like it's a bit strange. In the cockpit here, you have other signs that this was clearly some sort of competition machine. Right over here, you have what's called a dead man switch. I actually had one of these on my H2. This is so that you have the motorcycle be able to be turned off if the rider falls off of it. So you actually clip this to the rider, and then right over here next to the kill switch, if this pops out, the whole thing turns off. So that's in theory so that if you come flying off of the motorcycle engine shuts off. That's a competition requirement usually for big events like the Texas Mile, which is where I took my H2. So this is a key giveaway that this was clearly used as some sort of go fast roll race or competition machine in a drag strip environment or in a race event. Otherwise, like, it's pretty clean. It's pretty straightforward. Like, you kind of know what you're getting with this thing, but I think 12 grand doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for this bike. You also see it's pretty slammed in the front end, so also kind of chopped down on the geometry, designed to just go straight, just classic go fast boy type of things. So yeah, this one, I don't know. The value is, I don't know where you're getting 12 grand for this thing. I think it's worth 7 at most. I don't understand why such an old motorcycle that seems really straightforward would be worth so much money, but maybe I'm just not about that life. Moving on. All right, I really wanted to talk about this one because we're starting to get into some really interesting ones here. 2023 Ducati Streetfighter V4, $15,200 with 4,950 miles on it. Seller says, for sale, Ducati Streetfighter V4, completely stock, always garage kept. Please no silly offers or trades. Thank you. So, Ducati Streetfighter V4, these are absolutely fantastic. This is a motorcycle that came out in, I think it was 2021, 2022. This is last generation Panigale V4. So, frame, swing arm, chassis, engine, all this stuff comes from last generation V4. The base model, because this is not the S, doesn't have the semi-active Öhlins. It has, I believe, a Marzocchi fork and a Sachs shock, if memory serves me correctly. And so mechanical clickers for street duty, more than enough. Brembo brakes, you got the good stuff. Same master cylinder, all that good stuff. Same electronics hardware as the Streetfighter V4S. You don't get the super trick Morchesini forged wheels though, because the V4S does come with the really cool magnesium, the really sweet stuff, right? And I think time has been very kind to this motorcycle and will continue to be, because these are absolutely fantastic. Even in base trim, we've now gotten to the point, because Ducati guys love to buy the latest and greatest. This is now one generation old and not an S model. But as you can see, sellers letting it go for $15,200, which is a smoking deal on a bike with this few mileage that's basically stock, that's had nothing done to it, right? No exhaust, no gaudy tail tidies, no weird anodized parts. This is just a stock, clean Ducati Streetfighter V4. Now, what you might want to keep in mind is this does have almost 5,000 miles on it. These new V4s, if memory serves me correctly, I think they go into the low 5 figures for their first service. I don't think these need Desmo before like 12,000 miles. However, the first service on a Ducati V4 is going to be painful. Prepare your wallet, because the labor hours to get the Desmo sorted on 4 different cylinders across this V4, all that, it's going to cost a lot of money to service this bike. So it's very possible that this seller maybe saw what was coming down the pipe and he said, you know what? I don't want to pay all that money to service this machine. And then maybe that's your benefit, right? You are saving a lot from the original MSRP of this bike. I mean, brand new, this was well over $20,000 back in 2023. I don't quite remember the exact MSRP of a base Streetfighter V4, but I do remember that they were above 20 grand, because I think the one we did in 2022, which was a Streetfighter V4S, I got a decent deal on that because I bought it from Eurocycle, but it was damn near $30,000 for that motorcycle. So I think the base was in that kind of mid 20s, like low 20s, something like that. It's a ton of motorcycle for the money. These things absolutely rip. They rev to like 15,000 RPM and they sound absolutely wicked doing it. I love these bikes. And now, if you can find these clean examples, this is great. We did a Ducati video recently where we found a Streetfighter V4 that I thought was in great shape and going for a great price with some tasteful mods. This one's even better because it's bone stock. So this one, keep on the lookout for these like lightly used last generation Ducatis, because people that buy these bikes, they take care of them. You know, they're people that really love the brand. This is not their first motorcycle, and they're just getting rid of it to kind of move on to the next toy typically. So something to keep in mind. These are pretty sweet. All right, this one, confusing, strange. Let's talk about it. 2025 Vitacchi Sport for $2,500, 1,350 miles on the clock. We have it in Spanish. I'm going to do my very best to pronounce it and translate it. Vendo mi moto. He is selling his motorcycle. En perfectas condiciones. In perfect condition. La moto. I think that's a typo for la moto, because he's saying en perfectas condiciones la moto está casi nueva. It's almost new. Tengo título y factura. He has the title and a bill of sale or some sort of documentation to suggest where he bought it from and all that sort of thing. A Vitacchi Sport. I have never heard of this machine. The seller or whoever's on this is not giving me a vote of confidence. This is giving me Boom BD250 energy, Venom Motorsports energy. We talked about these bikes back in 2023. It's been 3 years now that we did that video where I bought the cheapo Boom BD250. Showed you guys that company is full of crap. The motorcycles suck. They're no good. They're like dumpy little single cylinders. And I think this bike is the same story. So $2,500 for this POS is out of control. I guarantee you, if you wanted a new Vitacchi Sport, you could probably get one for like $2,200 brand new. But for the love of God, don't do it. Don't buy a Vitacchi Sport. And the only photos we have are literally of this angle of the bike. We do not get other photos to show the other side of the bike. So perhaps it's been dropped. Perhaps something's happened to it. I don't know why the seller or whoever has it just has a dirt bike helmet and literally no other gear. The man is wearing chanclas, for God's sakes. Chanclas on the Vitacchi Sport is truly a flex. I mean, we all know the Vitacchi Sport is God's chariot. But yeah, just like an ugly, heinous, like almost AI rendered version of a motorcycle. Very odd that this person is trying to sell it with so few miles, but probably came to the same conclusion that anybody would after riding one of these bikes. And you just think, well, this thing's a giant POS. And that's what they typically are. These motorcycles that are super typically like a bike in a box from eBay or China or whatever, they are just so awful to ride. They're just like not built very well. They have dumpy little motors. They have barely any reason to exist. You're much better off buying something used in Japanese. And especially this guy wants $2,500 for it. I mean, we've seen on Facebook listings in these videos we've done that you can buy a great secondhand Japanese motorcycle for $2,500, $2,800 all day long. So this is completely unnecessary to spend your money on the Vitacchi Sport. That is absolutely crazy. So another delusional seller with a bike that he will unfortunately have to yeet off of a bridge. All right, next up, the only photo I had of this bad boy. This one was provided to us from a user on our Discord server, and I thought it was too wild to not talk about. It's a 2013 Honda VTX for $3,500 with 123,456 miles. I don't think that's the actual mileage. I think they just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seller says it's a project bike and needs some miscellaneous small stuff, and the fairing, headlight, and radio needs wired up. It runs and rides. It is very strange to see this done to a Honda VTX. These are, Harley big wheel mods. And this is one of the most heinous color combos I've seen. There was one we did not too long ago where it was like a lobster bike that had this same vibe, like lime green and red. You have like money bags, so like there's like money all over this thing, but now you're selling it for $3,500, which implies that perhaps it's not worth very much, and maybe you didn't have all that much money to begin with. Really cheeseball, like ape hanger chrome things, tiny little mirrors. None of this has aged well. I don't think this was ever cool. There's maybe a time that something like this was interesting, like in the world of big wheel choppers in the mid-2000s. But I want to point out, this is a 2013 model year bike. This bike didn't even exist in the time that doing something like this would have been like almost culturally passable. You know, this is really not acceptable post 2013 when this bike was new. And also, I want to point out, really funny on the photo here, we have a large Phillips flathead, some broken plastics, a couple wires and stuff. I feel like this guy was working on this bike and he was like, I hate this thing. I'm literally going to put it up for sale. Took one photo of it and put it up for sale. I think that's exactly what happened here because I can sense the frustration off of this photo with the broken pieces all over the ground and the flathead screwdriver. I often tell you guys, you gotta look closely on the photos on these listings because a listing can give you 1,000 words off of one little picture, you know? All this chrome crap on this bike. Look at all this wiring hanging out at the bottom here. This was perhaps a once halfway decent motorcycle that has been unfortunately just modified to death, and it's never going to be worth anything ever again. But I wanted to point this one out to you guys because it's just it's all in the small details in the listings. You always got to pay close attention. All right, this next one is just sad. It's a 2000 Ducati 916 going for $5,500 with 14,000 miles, also provided to us by a user on our Discord server. And this one, we're going to get into it. It's so sad. It says, nice bike, recent timing belt, stator just under 14,000 miles, completely chromed out. Lord have mercy, why would you chrome out a Ducati 916? That's just like, oh my God. Why would you take the time and effort to chrome out such a beautiful motorcycle? A bike that probably from the factory was like perfectly fine. These have a wonderful, timeless shape, the exposed trellis frame. They're a wonderful piece of Ducati history. And I think this was originally a white motorcycle because the gas tank is white with the Ducati logo, and that does look pretty clean. But why has it been chromed out? This is like a crime against humanity. Got an OG chromed out Vance and Hines pipe. Maybe he got the Vance and Hines pipe first and he's like, you know what? I got to get chrome wheels, chrome rear sets, chrome everything. And it's crazy because in a recent video, I did say that I wanted chrome to come back because I think chrome is kind of cool. This is not it. The chroming out a Ducati 916 that was never chromed out in the first place is not what you want to do. It's just making my cortisol spike looking at this thing, man. Chrome wheels. Why? Why did you do that? Got the classic analog gauges here. Still looks pretty neat. One thing that's kind of funny about these is if you've never ridden one or had one, I've ridden 2 different generations of this particular type of Ducati. You know, they're actually like so, I don't want to say backyard built, but they are very like handmade, if that makes sense. They don't feel like old Japanese bikes where you're like, oh, this was clearly designed in a factory and assembled by like a bunch of like robots and Japanese engineers and stuff. The old Ducatis really feel like just a ragtag team of passionate Italians put them together, which gives them their charm, but they definitely have that vibe about them. I cannot believe that this person did this to this poor Ducati, and I just have to move on before my cortisol keeps spiking, dude. I really do. All right, last but not least, this is a 2016 BMW S1000 single R for $5,500 with 14,000 miles. A seller did not put any description on this motorcycle. Now, I wanted to bring this one up because these, I think, are similar to the Ducati Streetfighter and some of the other models I've talked to you guys about have depreciated to a pretty attractive point. Now, here's the thing. These bikes were owned typically by people who had reasonable amounts of means, reasonable ownership. You know, I don't think they received the kind of like squid treatment that a lot of like, you know, big power naked bikes have received throughout the last 10, 15 years. One of my buddies way back in the day actually had one of these, this actually same generation of S1000 single R, and I got the chance to ride it, and it was fun. It made a ton of power. It was pretty cool. It's still that same cold, soulless BMW thing, but for a street bike, it really works pretty damn well. This one appears to be in decent condition with some decent modifications, some decent just like ownership. You know, it's got some classic like tiny little squid stuff here and there. But, you know, you look at the overall execution of the bike here. Everything looks pretty stock, pretty normal, pretty well set up. And these have really depreciated to a very powerful point, right? Again, this is now $5,500 that this guy wants for this bike. And the only thing I would be a little concerned about is since there's no description on it, and there's no, talk of ownership or anything like that, or maintenance or service records or history, eating it on a 10-year-old BMW S1000R with 14,000 miles, you might be successful, right? $5,500 is not a whole lot of money for a bike like this. If you get it and you got to spend an extra $2,000 in service and just to kind of get it up to snuff, you're $7,500 in for a bike that makes like 160 horsepower and is every bit the naked bike that you want to ride on the road. For a lot of people, this is kind of like, the perfect package. It's upright, inline four, over 160 horsepower, like super bike derived frame and geometry and all that good stuff. Like, this is kind of an apex predator street machine, all wrapped up in a package that, yes, it's 10 years old, but bikes have kind of had diminishing returns over the last 10 years. Like, they've gotten a little nicer, a little bit easier to ride, but it's not to the point where they're dramatically so much better or different than something 10 years ago. We really are seeing, like, diminishing returns every 10-year cycle on motorcycles nowadays. And to be honest, I kind of think we're post the golden period. Like, a lot of new products now are like, detuned inline threes and parallel twins and not really race derived and kind of like losing their edge and a bunch of TFTs and stuff. So maybe it's just me being an old timer and not really, loving the new stuff as much. But I do think the kind of peak motorcycle period was like mid 2000s to like mid 2010s, because a lot of this stuff had like, electronics and engine and frame all pretty much sorted and just works really great. And now you get them for a screaming deal. So this one could be pretty decent. I kind of been sleeping on these BMW S1000Rs. You don't see them come up for sale too often, but really decent motorcycle. I think definitely worth your consideration. So boys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed and checked out some of our It Came From Facebook videos. We have a ton of them in the back catalog. Check out the playlist down below and enjoy yourself and watch some Yammy Noob. Catch you guys in the next one. See you later.